Welcome to part 2 of our parental alienation series. Here today we have Jennifer Collett, who is a complementary care provider, and myself, Andrea Wainer. I'm a clinical social worker.
Perfect. Last week, we started on this series discussing parental alienation and the safe space agreement that can be used to restore alienated relationships. This week, we talk about how alienation is defined and characterized, how it might manifest in relationships, as well as some of the long-term harm that can be caused from the alienation itself. This week, we will talk about example number 2 on our list of examples of alienating behaviors, non-compliance of the court-ordered visitation outside of the circumstances of domestic violence. We will discuss the reason we need to add this caveat later on, but for now it's important to remember that false accusations and character assassination is part of the smear campaign used in a pattern of alienating behaviors. Non-compliance is seen in a number of direct behaviors like refusal to show up, showing up in an agreed spot at the wrong time or the date with the child, not being able or available to accept paperwork, not answering communication in a timely manner. These are obvious and recordable examples of what is known as stonewalling and are often manageable in a court at a cost. What is not manageable are the hidden and passive-aggressive stonewalling behaviors. These are things like creating fear in the child about the other parent, telling degrading stories about the other parent, projecting onto the other parent in negative ways. This can be most harmful when the child's performance determines the level of attention and praise and love that the abusive parent gives to the child, because it is based on whether they disconnect from the other parent. This happens in everyday life, in nonverbal communication, and in the modeling that is so naturally accepted in the parent-child relationship. In family law cases, parties are often subjected to court orders, which may obligate them or restrict them from doing certain things. Provisions of a court order may require parties to abide by a parenting or visitation schedule, a parenting plan, to produce disclosure about or other information, to pay child and or spousal support, to contribute to the children's expenses, transfer property like a matrimonial home, to make equalization or other payments, to refrain from harassing the other party, or possibly other provisions related to a domestic violence. It is the responsibility of both parties to keep the terms and directions given in the court order. The directions are not suggestions or proposals, but rather legal obligations each party owes to the other. And so what happens if we do not keep the terms of a court order? In the case of a breach, other than a payment of money, the terms of the order may be enforced by a contempt motion. But for a finding of contempt, the following is necessary. 1, the order must be breached. The order breached must state clearly and unequivocally what must be done or not done. The party who breached the order may have done so or must have done so deliberately and willfully. And 3, the evidence must show contempt beyond a reasonable doubt. Minor or inadvertent breaches of an order are not considered contempt. So Andrea, can you talk to us a little bit about what that might look like? And we've got very obvious contempt or obvious behaviors that may be considered contempt, but what are those less obvious behaviors? We talk about hidden behaviors here. So let's focus on some of those.
The hidden behaviors are things that people outside of the family cannot see. Okay. They are persistent and they are inherent in the actions and behavior of pretty much all abusers.
Okay.
Some of these things include telling a child negative things about you. Refusing to talk about you at all and giving the child the message that they must not, or they will not be loved or taken care of. Getting other people to say negative things about the protective parent. False allegations that are talked about or in the public, and other people talking about those false allegations, and then sort of feeding into this delusion that whatever the false allegation was is true, and they are protecting the child from whatever that was, but it's false. Lying about the protected parent to the schools, medical providers, neighbors, etc. Isolating the child away from anything having to do with the protective parent. That can include pets, grandparents, activities, places, even foods that are comforting to the child. Basically, canceling everything about that associated with the protective parent, removing it from the child's life. Requesting supervised visits when the protective parent never harmed the children is alienating. Achieving orders that takes away the protective parent's parenting rights. Blocking access. Creating other activities for the child during a scheduled and court-ordered visit with the protective parent, or scheduling the child or multiple children's time when they are with the protective parent in a way that the protective parent can't possibly go to all of these different places. Nor
Like if you don't have a car and you schedule all of their extracurriculars with, yeah.
Or like, you know, putting the child on a team on a Saturday when that child's supposed to be with mom. And now the child saying, if you don't take me, I'm letting down my team.
Yeah.
So you have a coach and teammates upset with you, and you feel like you're perpetuating this negativity. Having to be the person that says, I'm not bringing you, right? If you're the protective parent, and not really being able to tell the child why, because protective parents, we are aspiring not to involve the child in this drama, this adult thing. We're trying to parent. When you are undermined as a parent, it's not just your parenting that is destroyed, it's your child's opportunity to have a family. Family life does not exist normally if one parent is excluded or one family member, or some kids won't see the parent and some will. You no longer have the typical family unit. Everyone is disrupted in their own way. Manipulations, having visits, scheduling visits without your child knowing, telling the child that the parent is coming, but the parent was never informed, or perhaps was uninvited, or perhaps was told, if you come, the police will show up.
Yes.
So this is an important one because it's prevalent and it's huge. Creating a veneer or a mask to the child in which you are looking like you want to comply. You want them to have a relationship with that protective parent, yet doing everything you possibly can to make it impossible for the protective parent to meet the expectation. Then when the protective parent doesn't show up, pointing that out to the child and other people around. Who all confirm it's so disappointing that the protective parent didn't come. I don't know why your mother, your father does this, etc. Giving the chronic message that a child is going to be unloved, punished, judged, unworthy, and even bad if they miss or act like or mention or receive messages from the parent. Giving the chronic message that a child is going to be unloved, punished, judged, unworthy, and even bad if they miss or act like or mention or receive messages from the parent. All of this is very damaging to the child's self-esteem, and the child will seek to maintain normalcy. The child won't want to go against the family. They will feel too scared, and they will buy into this denigration. Okay.
So there's something that's coming to mind, two things actually. With regards, it's not often spoken about, but here in Canada, we're starting to recognize grandparents' rights. And so this looks like the opportunity for me to bring that in as well. So here's an example where grandparents are vitally important in a relationship with a child. And oftentimes when, mom and dad break up, there's a problem with grandparents, or sometimes that abuser will restrict or deny a relationship with grandparents. And so that adds another level of alienation, but isolation for the child. It takes away another safe, secure relationship that normally wouldn't have, there wasn't any abuse, or there isn't any abuse in, but that's a close relationship from the other parent's family that the child is alienated, or that the families, they're alienated from each other, right? And then the second one, a question that came to mind was, why might we, there are times where we need to, and that's the caveat that I mentioned earlier with things like domestic abuse. Why would we not honor a court order? A target parent wants to do, or target grandparent, or any person in the relationship wants to do whatever they have to, jumps through every hoop to see the kids because they want to comply. They want to continue that relationship. So why would a target parent or grandparent not comply with a court order if there's something like abuse, for instance, and you got into court and the children are required to see, we'll say mom and dad, just because, required to see dad every other weekend? Maybe the kids are terrified because they've experienced abuse, or maybe there's a significant violent situation that the courts are not recognizing. Right. And why would a mom withhold? Why would she not want to have her children go to the fathers in those situations? Well, sometimes it's scary. We have to be careful with the court orders. So how do we respect the court orders, but also keep our kids safe? And why would we do that?
Well, sometimes in order to keep sometimes we have to make a choice. We have to decide, are we going to respect the court orders and put our child in harm's way? Or are we not going to respect the court orders and be in contempt of court? There are people who have made the decision to say, no, my child's not safe. I'm keeping the child with me to keep them safe. And they've ended up in jail. Right. There are also people who didn't want to send their child on a visit and did anyway, and then the child was killed by the abuser. And that's why I want to bring this up, because as much as we're all trying to avoid parental alienation, there is a very important factor as a parent. We must always consider our child's safety first. And we are going to end up with repercussions from the court if we do not follow that order. So right. How can we be very careful and very clear and in no way manipulate anything? We just want to express this is our action. We're doing it for safety. We need the court's attention on this. How do we do that without causing further problems for ourselves in this specific situation? Well, one thing that we have to do is be sure that even though the other parent is an abuser, that we do not take part in alienation ourselves, which is very, very hard. And we're going to be accused of it anyway, because most abusers will end up using as a defense or an offense, depending on where in the scenario, they will say, I never did anything to the kid. The kid's scared of me because the mother said it or the father said it. Yeah. What we can do is be sure that we focus on parenting and keeping the child safe, and we do not discuss the other parent in a negative light, even if that parent is abusive.
Yeah.
We can have an open and safe conversation with our children without judgment. We can say to our children, I want you to be safe. I am so sorry that this happened to you. I understand what you were saying. I'm going to do my best to keep you safe. And then cut it off. That's it. Get on with the day. Do what we need to do. Do we need to file a police report? Do we need to speak to a lawyer? Do we need to draw up an emergency motion? What do we need to do? Keep that separate. Don't let it overwhelm you and become your central focus, even though it may be the most difficult thing that you've ever done.
Yeah.
Especially if
It
there's
will
been
be.
a crisis.
Yeah.
Just focus on you and your child and what you can do. Don't get into many different dialogues. And any conversations that you are having with your friends, your lawyer, domestic violence caseworker, as much as possible, do this when the child's not present. We are trying to give these children who've been traumatized stability.
Yeah.
We can support them and love them and keep them safe to the best of our ability, but we need to keep them emotionally safe. And that means we push this to the space it belongs in their lives. We address it, we deal with it, and we move on. We move on with the day. It is going to be those safe experiences, that love that comes from us, that becomes their anchor.
That's
so
right.
We can't get lost in the emotion. We need to get our own support when they are not present to deal with the horror of this. But we cannot deal with our horror in front of the children.
Absolutely. I would like to add in that, for the most part, lawyers and people who work in the courts are becoming much more aware of this kind of dynamic. And your lawyer is your number one protection from any harms, any further harms. You can send a letter to your lawyer rather than respond to the other parent or whoever. But the one thing that is very important to remember, no matter whether or not you see the child, you're holding your ground, you're keeping that space, everything it fits in its own space. As long as you handle it upright, as long as you keep to your own moral values and keep to the parental relationship or the grandparent relationship that you have with the child, it doesn't matter what happens right now. Even though there's damage happening to the relationship, those children will be able to look back and remember you were upright. They will have had a model of upright behavior to depend on and to reflect back when it's their time, if they ever need to. But they also will remember that you were not that harmful individual. As an adult, once they can look with hindsight, they'll be able to see that you did everything you could in the healthiest, safest way possible. We hope.
I agree.
We hope. So what are some of the harmful ways we might model our worldviews for our children that we might not necessarily be aware of? So when you talk about big and healthy energy, when we're out there living our healthy life, how might we be modeling some less healthy behaviors? What might we not see about our own behaviors that will model dysfunction later on for our kids?
Well, we're going out and we're showing the world where we're at. The thoughts in our mind come out through words, and that gets placed into interactions with people. If we believe that the world is overall a good place and people are good and that we should respect them and have peaceful relationships, we will model that. If we go out into the world feeling exhausted, traumatized, poverty-stricken, taken advantage of, thinking there's fear behind each door, we are modeling that. Children are watching us. They can see what we're not saying. So we have to be the best that we can be. And a lot of times that means shifting our thoughts away from the chaos, away from the upset, and back onto intentionally thinking about what we can do and what we are intended to do.
So a thought there might be, even though we are experiencing A, B, and C, and it feels like terrible or rotten, I'm going to still handle this day the best that I can. I'm going to take everything that comes in the most positive way that I can.
Exactly.
And you're not lying to your children. You're not pretending. You're being very real and authentic, because even though you are dealing with that situation, you are, like you say, choosing to spend your energy in a certain way, in a more positive and constructive way. And that models.
Exactly. And another thing is, with false allegations and the things that the children have been told, we are modeling for them that we are not that. That is made up. That is a disconnection. If they heard that you were dysfunctional or crazy or an addict, and they spend time with you and you are present and peaceful and you have some sort of community or friends or neighbors, or you go out into the world and you're kind. If you are the type of person who adds to the situations that you are in, they will see that. That is what they will believe. They're not necessarily going to believe one adult over another. They will believe what they see.
That's right. As a parent or as a grandparent, there's always an energetic tether. We are always like in the womb and we were connected with the umbilical cord. There's always an energetic umbilical cord to our children or our grandchildren that can never be broken. So as long as we may be apart from them, the more we heal ourselves, the better work we do with ourselves, they end up feeling that, both when they see us, but even when they're not around us. And that, it's my own personal belief, but I think that helps them heal as well, because energy goes to where it's needed. It cannot be destroyed. That's the law of energy. So if we are being our very best, and then we're building ourselves back up, the energy goes to where it's needed. They need it. And they're connected to us with that etheric tether. They get that good energy too. So if we focus on it and not the negative side of things, if we sort of change the way we think to the good energy that the kids are going to be getting, even though we're experiencing this trauma from the courts or whatever process we're going through, then we'll all come out in the end with a much better perspective and a healthier dynamic, I think. Yeah.
And also the other thing is, unfortunately, there are going to be children who end up not seeing a parent or grandparent for years.
Yes.
We need to be ready when they come back, because if we do everything you just said, they are coming back. We need to be healthy. We need to be stable. We need to be living our best life. We need to be living true to our virtues and our ethics. We can't let this, we don't have the luxury of letting this take us down. This is not the end of the story. This is just a small chapter. So we need to be doing the very best that we can do every day, even if we don't see the kids, because they need us for a lifetime.
That's right.
And we can't get sucked into, like, if we want them to be critical thinkers and to look outside of this isolating experience where an abuser was impacting them negatively and shifting their views, then we need to be bigger than this experience. We need to step out of the story and become who we are intended to be. And that ties in with one of the things I work on with people is being intentional with your time. And I know it sounds like I'm being, maybe I'm being cold or dismissive. I'm not being cold or dismissive. I know how hard this is. I have been through it for many years. Something that helps people is to be intentional with how they are going to spend their time.
Mhm.
So you set up your day, you set up your week on what you're going to do, including self-care, including what you're going to think about. When are you going to answer emails? When are you resting? When are you laughing with friends? Everything needs to be included so you can see the big life you still live
Mhm.
and how small or how much space this has in your life. You decide how much time you are spending on false allegations, court orders. I know it's time consuming, takes
Mhm.
quite a bit of time, but even within that, you set the time up in your calendar. You are in control about what you are thinking and doing and when.
Mhm.
For instance, have an email box, have an email address.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Hi.
Have an email address that's used for court documents or these types of issues. Keep it separate from the rest of your stuff and make a date in your book on what time you're going to answer it. And at that time, do that, give yourself the time that you need, and then move on to an enjoyable activity. Don't just answer as it comes in unless it's an emergency. Make room for you so you can grow and be your best. So the energy that you are giving to your child, the way you just described, is positive and healthy and big.
Yeah. Yes. So one of the strategies that we had here in our slides was to allow the child to express themselves, even if it is hard for you to hear. Provide the safe space for them to share their feelings, even if they are angry with you. Validate their feelings. So you made a comment before, why weren't you at grandma's? And you said, remind them that you will always do your best. There's an example. So instead of getting into the, I was there, or I didn't know that I had a visit, or your dad didn't tell me, or your mom didn't tell me, or whoever, I love you. And this would be letting them express themselves. I love you. I will always try to be there. We're kind of refocusing that energy into a more positive way of dealing with it. We're not stepping into the battle that has been created with the words or the ideas that have been put into the child's head. We're validating their feelings and saying, absolutely, I can see why that's so confusing. I don't understand either, but I will always do my best to be there. I want to see you. I love you. I miss you. I cannot wait to hold you in my arms, or whatever else that validates that child. But
exactly.
The comment that the statement that we have here is, I understand. We're validating through the terms of, I understand how you feel. Those are your feelings. They're very real to me. They're very important to me. And saying, I understand, it says all of that in one simple little statement. You were told that I did not come to the visit, and it made you angry with me. So I'm honoring what you were told. I'm not discrediting it. This is what you were told. Here is how it made you feel. I've now created space for us to have a dialogue about it, and for that feeling to settle in you, or for you to recognize that feeling and talk about it. I'm here to listen if you want to share how you feel about this. Those words are important. I'm here to listen. I'm not going to talk to you about it. I'm not going to feedback and give comments, but I'm here to listen to how you feel. And that statement puts we recognize our children have feelings, our children, grandchildren, whoever we're caring for, whatever relationship dynamic. As long as we're recognizing those feelings, we're validating them. But then when we're saying, I'm willing to listen to how you feel, that means you have permission to completely have your own opinion without mine. I'm not going to project. I'm not going to add my opinion. I'm not going to dissect your opinion. I'm just going to listen. And that space, you have that space in my world. Your value is, you have that. And by showing them that, that's an example of what you just said, how they will see your behaviors. They will see and feel your healthiness. Because when we don't get pulled in with those emotional fishhooks and dive into that dynamic and waste the energy, and it is a waste. It doesn't do anything constructive.
No,
that they come out on top.
that's right.
No.
You also said something before that I thought of. You said, when children are telling you, you know, they're upset, you didn't come to the visit, why didn't you come? That you can also say to them, and what else? What else do you have to say?
Yes.
You can let them, like, it will be very painful to hear as a parent or grandparent that the child believes that you didn't come when you were never told about the visit or you were told not to come. It will be painful, but there's no time for you to feel that pain. It's now parenting or grandparenting. You're there for the child. What else? Tell me more, and let them say it. Don't correct it. Don't jump in and say, I was supposed to go, I didn't. Don't. That's about you.
Yeah.
They need you to be the adult who is there for them, where they can be safe.
That's right. Many times I have heard, well, what about me? How am I supposed to be a good parent if I'm not worrying about me? We do worry about us. This is worrying about us. Later on, we'll be able to digest and process all of those things that come up. What about us? And we have therapists to do it with. We have friends. We have our support system. Maybe we don't have that support system. And so what about me comes up when we don't feel like we have any way to communicate our needs or to get those needs met. Even though we feel that way, it's not time. And as a parent, a lot of people get upset at me when I say this, but hear me out. As a parent, you give up that right when you give birth to that child. Their needs and wants always come first. You will have time later on. Maybe as a mature adult, your child will come to you. And in my own experience, this has happened. When you let it go, and as an adult, your child will come to you and say, Mom, do you remember this? This is how I remember it. Is that how you remember it? One, I'm then given the opportunity to talk about how I remember it, not that it was right or wrong, but my adult child just came to me with their own memories and asked me to validate and confirm. And then I have the opportunity to talk about how I felt then. The good that comes out of that is, one, in the moment, we're feeling 1,000 things. And it's really difficult to articulate that one thing we're trying to express that we're feeling in that trauma. So later on, you'll have been able to think about it and clearly express what you're feeling right then. And as an adult, to your older child or to whoever else, once you've had some time, you'll have a much better communication about it. You will both come to some healthy understanding, and you may actually have closure and heal some of those childhood wounds, but only if you let it go, only if you wait until the future when that time comes up. You cannot do it in the moment when the child is needing you then, because again, when you give birth, you give up that right as a parent to come first, right? So,
right. And it's also a bit counterintuitive, because maybe you didn't see your child for 3 years. And for those 3 years, or grandchild, for those 3 years, that child was told terrible things about you. And now the child is telling you what he or she heard, and you want to jump in and correct it and say, no, that never happened. Let me tell you my side. That will make it worse.
Yeah. And the conflict that it puts that child in, like it literally torture, like they're being pulled apart emotionally. So,
right. And it's also letting them know that they will internalize that like they are bad.
Yes.
They're a bad person. They're attached to this lying person. It's very confusing. That must mean they're bad. So we have to be thankful for what we do have, which is the child in front of us.
Yeah.
And open our arms to them in the moment that we have with them. And we take ourselves out of that later, and we go to our support systems, our exercise, our diet, our doctors, our friends, our loved ones, and we very meticulously organize what are we going to do to be our best selves in all areas. That's
Absolutely.
what is going to make a difference.
When we're talking to children, it's very difficult when we come out of any kind of toxic dynamic. We're angry at the other parent or the grandparent or whoever else, and our kids feel that. And so one of the statements a mantra that I took on was to my child, you are the best of both your father and I together. Even though we may not get along or like each other right now, you creating you brought the best of us out, right? So when we focus on, we may be angry with the other person, but that child is the gift of the most wonderful parts of two people. All of the beautiful things that we fall in love with another person, or we learn to appreciate with another person, that child is a reflection of the most beautiful parts of that. So if we focus on our child being the most beautiful parts of us, a darkness lifts off, right? We're not focusing on the anger at the other parent and then them being a part of the other parent. We're actually, that might be the modeling of the toxic behavior that I was talking about, an example.
Exactly. I get it. Yeah. I also think, like, you used the word emotional fishhook, and that was such a good word because it's a constant emotional fishhook to have gone through what you've gone through as a protective parent who now has been alienated. And now you have in front of you this child who you love so much, who is spewing the ideas, the delusions, the lies, the allegations. It's coming out of them.
Yeah.
That's the emotional fishhook. We need to be able to push that off.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the child, act with compassion, validate what they're thinking, and come back to the present.
That's right.
And
what is the present?
It's choppy, but the more we do it, the better we get at it, and the more they will appreciate us for that.
I like that you just said that. This takes practice. It is a workout like anything else, right?
It is. I did it wrong many, many, many times before being able to even start doing it right.
That's important to honor. I certainly didn't do it right either, right? So we practice and we find what works for us. And then how do we know what's working? Our children are responding in more positive and healthy ways. They're not feeling that heavy darkness. We can see their body language. They're lighter when they're around, right? So,
and things fall into place when this sounds a little bit out there, but when you are at a higher energetic level, things fall into place.
That's true.
The children that you are connected to feel that as well.
Yes.
I think it's a higher level of, I'm not sure I don't really know how to define it. Consciousness or
alignment.
Vibration.
Yep. That's a perfect word. Yeah. Because everything, well, that's a different subject.
But we do attract more. Like we attract, I can't explain it scientifically, but we attract what is within us. So if we have positive thoughts, we view the world as a positive place. We can see the joy, even though there may be darkness around us. If we can still be happy in our lives, happiness is not outside of us. It's within us.
Yes.
It's not like happiness is in a situation. You bring yourself to every situation. So if we can nurture the happiness and joy within us as we navigate this choppy situation, the children will feel that.
I agree. Yeah.
And they won't feel it if we get reeled in by an emotional fishhook of delusions.
No, I think that shows emotional dysregulation or models emotional dysregulation, and that that there are external controls over us. And so if we are modeling staying on point in the moment with our kids, healthy behaviors, looking at them like you are the best of everything, giving them that good, solid, calm state within us.
That in order to do all this, your basic needs need to be met first. Like you need to be safe, roof
Yes.
over head. Like you're not going to be able to do any of this if you have like living in housing instability.
Yeah.
So it's always number one is basic needs, right? Like when I didn't have health insurance and couldn't take care of my medical needs, there was no way I would have been stable enough to act like this.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, first, you put the oxygen mask on you.
Yes.
And that means you find a way to get your basic needs met. And they're super basic: housing, medical, food,
yeah,
something productive to do during the day, whether that's education or generating income, is number one. Get the bare basics. Once you have that and you're safe, you have a lock on the door, restraining order, whatever it is, once you feel safe, you can facilitate a safe environment.
That's right.
That's when you start, I think.
I think that was very important to point out because I overlooked it completely. Yeah.
Well, I feel like people will look at us and want to scream. Because I think I would have screamed, like, I think I would have looked at me now 5 years ago and said, like, you don't understand. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
My situation's very dangerous. But like now I've been through it and I know that like my situation is very serious. And my response to it is to be very, very serious in my growth, because that's the key. That's how I get out.
I like what you just said there. My response to that is very serious in my growth, because that's the way out. Okay. And we're going to quote that one.
I wanted to bring up also the importance of validating the child. So if the child's like, well, you're an alcoholic, I don't want anything to do with you because you drunk drive. You don't step into that and you say, thanks for letting me know how you feel. What else? And they'll keep talking, right? You have to be super careful. So you validate, you give them the opportunity to talk more, and then you shift to the present. And part of the present is this safe space agreement. So what were we just doing? We were eating dinner. So we're still eating dinner. We're going to move on now. We don't let anyone hijack the day that we intended or the agreement that we have. We are showing them, you're stable with me. You're saying these things, and that's fine. Everyone gets a turn to speak, and I'm there for you, and I validate what you're saying. And right now we're going to clear up because we're leaving to go somewhere in 10 minutes. We need to take the plates, put them in the sink, wash our hands, and go.
So you've broken it down and really taken away from the energy of the stress and put it into manageable bite-sized pieces.
Right. And also, I am intentional with the schedule. I'm the parent. This is what we're doing. When we sit at the table, we're eating together, we have certain agreements. I've already told you tonight we're going to a movie. So let's go onward.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you that I can contain difficult feelings and upset, and I can make this safe. I'm not going to let somebody else's negative story take over and everything go haywire with door slamming and stomping and upset and being late. Nope, we'll go right back to schedule.
That's right. That's right.
And you don't have to have a packed schedule, but you do have to stick to the commitments that you made. And by the way, if you stick to the commitments that you've made and showed the children, do you think that they will really believe that you didn't go to a scheduled visit?
Right.
Or anything else? Anything else that says that you're unstable or you're, erratic? No, because they're going to feel and see that you're not. If you make an arrangement to meet a friend at a certain time, you do that.
Yeah.
They will see the opposite in how you live.